Yeah, it's a very important topic in the real estate industry, and as you alluded to, commercial banks have retrenched on real estate.
Corporate America's northward drift has transformed from an occasional tax dodge into a full-fledged exodus. Over the past decade, an increasing number of U.S.-born giants have quietly shifted their legal domiciles, embedded themselves in Canadian soil, and reaped the benefits of friendlier tax regimes, skilled workforces, and more predictable regulatory climates. What began as isolated corporate tax inversions has evolved into a dynamic trend, reshaping the continent's economic landscape. From fast food titans to waste management behemoths, here are standout examples of major American companies that have bid farewell to their U.S. roots and re-anchored their headquarters in Canada. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Restaurant Brands International, the Burger King-Tim Hortons Union. When Burger King announced its $11 billion merger with Canada's beloved Tim Hortons in August 2014, few foresaw how seismic the move would be. Beyond birthing Restaurant Brands International (RBI), the deal engineered one of corporate history's most celebrated tax inversions. By reincorporating in Canada, RBI slashed its headline corporate tax rate, all while preserving its operational core in Miami and Columbus. The merger was structured as a purchase of Tim Hortons by Burger King, yet post-deal, the combined entity was legally Canadian. Chief Executive Daniel Schwartz famously declared the new company would be based in Canada, the largest market of the combined company, securing a perpetual home in Toronto's Exchange Tower. This inversion, rated the fifth largest in history, drew fierce criticism in Washington. President Obama's administration tightened anti-inversion rules in response, but for RBI, the financial rewards were immediate. Lower effective taxes on foreign earnings amplified global expansion funds, fueling Tim Hortons' resurgence in Asia and Latin America, and underpinning Burger King's aggressive outreach in Europe. Despite occasional public backlash, RBI's dual-brand strategy under a Canadian umbrella has proven resilient, with combined revenues surpassing $4 billion by 2016. Today, RBI stands as a testament to how strategic mergers, not merely corporate relocation, can realign a U.S. icon under Canada's benevolent tax sky. Waste Connections, from Texas roots to a Toronto rebrand solid waste titan. Waste Connections, long headquartered in the Woodlands, Texas, surprised many in January 2016 by swallowing Canada's Progressive Waste Solutions for $2.67 billion. The deal was structured so that Waste Connections shareholders own 70% of the new combined entity. Yet the legal parent relocated its tax domicile to Canada. Although operational leadership remained in Texas, the company's registration in Ontario, the heart of its substantial Canadian operations, effectively inverted its corporate citizenship northward. This move elevated Waste Connections into the upper echelons of North American waste management, expanding its network across 39 U.S. states and provinces. By rebranding its Canadian arm as Waste Connections of Canada, the firm capitalized on lower corporate levies and tighter environmental regulations north of the border. Even as the SEC filings continued listing Texas addresses, the company's tax address, board minutes, and annual meetings shifted to Toronto, earning it a place among the world's largest waste firms by market capitalization. The merger underscored how industries far removed from finance can use Canada's corporate regime to sharpen their competitive edge, fueling Waste Connections' $750 million in annualized revenue growth from subsequent acquisitions in 2024 alone. Tim Hortons, closing the Ohio chapter, opening the Toronto era. Although Tim Hortons originated in Canada, it once maintained a substantial U.S. headquarters in Dublin, Ohio, housing nearly 130 employees as of early 2015. Yet by May of that year, the coffee and donut powerhouse announced the closure of its U.S. office, consolidating leadership and administrative functions exclusively in Toronto. This shift was driven by RBI's integration plan, which aimed to centralize corporate strategy under a single Canadian entity following the 2014 merger. Closing the Ohio headquarters did more than streamline operations. It sent a clear message about Canada's centrality to Tim Hortons' brand identity. Freed from the complexities of cross-border payroll, benefits, and taxation, the company reallocated resources to product innovation and international franchise development. By 2018, Tim Hortons had relocated 400 employees to downtown Toronto's Exchange Tower, embedding itself at the heart of Canada's financial district and reinforcing its status as an emblem of national pride, even as its menu continued to serve millions of Americans every year. Shopify speculation. From Ottawa to New York, a reverse signal. In a twist that underscores the fluidity of corporate addresses, Ottawa-born e-commerce juggernaut. Shopify raised eyebrows when its 2024 seconds filing listed a New York address as a principal executive office. While not a firm relocation, the New York listing fueled speculation that Shopify might be positioning itself for broader index eligibility or a partial redomiciliation southward. For American companies eyeing Canadian domiciles, Shopify's flirtation with a US HQ reminds them that jurisdiction swaps are as much about market perception as taxes. By showcasing its New York presence, Shopify signaled closeness to Wall Street and US institutional investors, even as it maintained its Canadian board and main campus in Ottawa. This dual headquarters strategy highlights a new iteration of the northward trend, firms leveraging Canadian corporate advantages while retaining US cachet, effectively enjoying the best of both worlds. Tech exodus, H-1B headaches and talent lures. Beyond headline-making tax inversions, a quieter wave has swept through the tech sector. Constrained by the H-1B visa cap and facing lengthy processing times, numerous U.S. startups and mid-sized firms have established or moved significant operations to Canada. As one Waterloo EDC report notes, dropping H-1B certainties have pushed businesses to avoid the headaches involved with the U.S. visa program while still tapping into the global talent pool through Canada's more accessible global immigration pathways. Companies like Coinbase and Shopify have opened major Canadian R&D hubs, mirroring full HQ functions in Toronto and Vancouver. While these aren't always full legal inversions, the shift of executive teams, board meetings, and IP development northward signals Canada's rising allure as a corporate home. For many tech firms, the choice boils down to hiring agility. Canada's startup visa, venture rebates, and proximity to U.S. markets combine for a compelling proposition that outpaces the labyrinth of American immigration bureaucracy. This movement, less about tax rate differences and more about talent access, represents the next frontier of corporate migration, one that transcends labels of fleeing to encompass strategic growth. The broader implications. These high-profile moves underscore a broader recalibration of North America's business geography. Canada's lower statutory tax rate, 15% federal, plus provincial levies compared to the former US 35%, has long been a driver, but other factors now loom larger: more stable regulatory frameworks, investment incentives, and hospitable immigration policies. As the U.S. debate over corporate tax reversals and anti-inversion rules simmers, Canadian provinces vie to sweeten the pot with grants, land deals, and research credits. Yet this migration is not without critics. Opponents argue that inversions erode U.S. tax revenue, weaken domestic job growth, and betray national responsibility. Proponents counter that companies still derive operational benefits from American markets and that friendly cross-border commerce enhances overall competitiveness. In many cases, executives remain in U.S. offices, only legal paper trails shift. Still, the political optics of a storied American brand renouncing its corporate citizenship can ignite fierce rhetoric in Washington and on Capitol Hill. Looking ahead. With the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act narrowing inversion incentives, the heyday of full legal inversions has waned. Yet as corporate tax policy continues to oscillate, and as geopolitical frictions add layers of uncertainty, the lure of a stable, moderately taxed environment remains potent. Companies are now adopting hybrid structures, dual headquarters, regional domiciles, and strategic IP holding companies to capture Canadian advantages without severing U.S. roots entirely. The era of straightforward inversions may be receding, but the northward current endures. Whether through full reincorporations, secondary HQs, or expanded operations, Canada's role in North American commerce is deepening. As CEOs weigh where to park their paper HQs, they must balance tax considerations with talent strategies, regulatory clarity, and public perception. For communities on both sides of the border, this drift reshapes jobs, investments, and regional economies in ways that will resonate for decades. The top examples: Restaurant Brands International, Waste Connections, Tim Hortons, Shopify's speculative listing, and the tech sector's H-1B-driven migration illustrate that corporate domiciles are no longer tethered solely to historical origins. Instead, they follow the logic of modern business imperatives. As Canada continues to refine its competitiveness, more companies may gaze northward, ensuring that the story of corporate migration remains an evolving chapter in North America's economic saga. One striking illustration of this northward pull comes from the energy services sector, where Civeo Corporation engineered a corporate metamorphosis in 2015 that made it legally Canadian while retaining its operational heart in Texas. Originally incorporated in Delaware as Civeo US, the company formed a British Columbia parent, Civeo Canada, and merged its US entity into this new shell in a redomicile transaction effective in the second half of 2015. Shareholders exchanged their Delaware shares one-for-one for Civeo Canada common shares, and at closing, the newly minted Canadian parent became the publicly traded parent of the entire group, its stock still listed on both the TSX and NASDAQ. Crucially, by demonstrating that more than 25% of its revenues, assets, employees, and payroll were in Canada, namely its sprawling worker accommodations in Alberta's oil sands, the company sidestepped onerous U.S. anti-inversion rules and secured a friendlier tax environment under Canada's territorial system. Post-redomiciliation, Civeo continued to service major oil and gas clients from its Houston offices but enjoyed the benefits of Canada's lower effective tax regime on foreign-sourced income and a simpler repatriation framework. Management lauded the move as more than a tax play. The new structure allowed greater access to Canadian capital markets, the attraction of investors familiar with its on-the-ground operations, and the ability to tap into government incentives for resource sector employers. This strategic blend of legal domicile in Canada and operational muscle in the U.S. exemplifies a new playbook for mid-cap firms seeking both stability and efficiency without uprooting the teams that drive day-to-day performance. In the fintech arena, one of the most high-profile examples of an American firm leveraging Canadian incorporation is Coinbase. While the cryptocurrency exchange remains based in San Francisco, in 2023, it registered Coinbase Canada Inc. as a standalone British Columbia corporation with its head office in Toronto, effectively relocating its Canadian legal headquarters north of the border. This Canadian subsidiary now employs a full complement of local leadership, compliance, and legal teams, and is the first major international crypto exchange to secure a restricted dealer registration under the Canadian Securities Administrators Framework. By anchoring a distinct Canadian entity, Coinbase not only positions itself squarely within Canada's regulatory ambit, gaining clarity on digital asset rules, tax treatment, and customer protections, but also underscores the growing importance of a bifurcated corporate structure in which regional headquarters carry the legal and financial weight for key markets. These cases, Civeo's full legal inversion and Coinbase's targeted Canadian incorporation, highlight the spectrum of strategies U.S. companies now employ to headquarter functions in Canada. Whether through outright redomiciling of the parent company or by carving out a nationally chartered subsidiary to house critical leadership and governance, the underlying driver is the same. Harness the predictability of Canada's tax, regulatory, and talent environments while preserving access to U.S. markets and operational hubs. As these examples demonstrate, the concept of a single monolithic corporate headquarters is giving way to a more fluid, jurisdictionally diverse footprint that follows the logic of modern global commerce. Next Source Materials Inc. charted an ambitious path northward in late 2022 when its board proposed redomiciling the company from Minnesota to Canada under the Canada Business Corporations Act. Originally a U.S.-based junior mining firm focused on rare earth oxides and battery minerals, Next Source recognized that listing on the Toronto Stock Exchange would deepen its exposure to investors steeped in resource exploration. While Canada's supportive regulatory environment and tax incentives for critical minerals development promised to stretch each exploration dollar further. At a special meeting called in early 2023, shareholders approved exchanging their U.S. shares one-for-one into a newly created Canadian parent, after which the Minnesota entity continued only as an operating subsidiary. This move not only unlocked eligibility for Canadian flow-through share financing, a powerful tool in the junior mining sector, but also simplified cross-border drilling contracts by aligning legal domicile, tax reporting, and environmental permitting under Canadian jurisdiction. Sunshine Biopharma Inc., a small Colorado-incorporated life sciences outfit, executed its reincorporation in the autumn of 2013 through an elegant two-step maneuver. First, the company formed a Delaware subsidiary named Sunshine Biopharma Inc. Delaware, into which the Colorado entity merged. Immediately thereafter, that Delaware corporation filed a certificate of transfer with Delaware authorities and articles of continuance under the CBCA, emerging on paper as Sunshine Biopharma Inc., a Canadian federal corporation headquartered in Montreal. Beyond the headline benefit of a more favorable corporate tax regime, the shift aimed to shield Canadian shareholders of target companies from adverse tax treatment in contemplated acquisitions, while reaffirming the firm's commitment to its Canadian research partnerships and biomanufacturing plans. Despite the legal shuffle, management kept every functional office, R&D lab, and employee contract untouched, evidence that for many mid-cap firms, migrating a paper headquarters north needn't uproot the people who drive the science forward. Trillion Energy International Inc. surrendered its Delaware charter and embraced a Canadian identity at the dawn of 2022, completing a continuance and amalgamation into its British Columbia subsidiary on January 21st. Originally forged in the regulatory crucible of CalGEM's oversight, Trillion recognized that aligning its domicile with Canada's more streamlined reporting rules and capital markets infrastructure would accelerate funding for its burgeoning SASB gas field venture, a project critical to its long-term growth. The move slashed the administrative drag of dual jurisdiction filings, opened the door to partnerships with Canadian investment banks, and positioned Trillion to tap the CSE and Canadian trading streams for its development financing. Despite the legal pivot, operations in California and Texas remained untouched, underscoring that for many resource explorers, migrating a paper HQ north can yield outsized efficiency gains without disturbing field teams or drilling schedules. Athena Gold Corporation followed suit in April 2025, orchestrating a merger of its Delaware parent into Nova Athena Gold Corp., its British Columbia arm, under Section 275 of the BC Business Corporations Act. Ratified by nearly 79% of shareholders on March 27th, the redomestication took effect on April 16, 2025, when the newly amalgamated issuer, continuing under the Athena Gold name, set its record date for April 24th on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Beyond the headline appeal of Canada's competitive tax regime, the redomestication unlocked eligibility for flow-through share financing, a vital instrument in the junior miners toolkit, while reinforcing its commitment to local mineral jurisdictions like Ontario's Red Lake District. Trading as ATHA on the CSE and AHNR on the OTCQB, the company now enjoys closer alignment between its legal, regulatory, and capital market centers, all without relocating its exploration crews or diluting its operational momentum. Contact Gold Corp charted its own northward path in mid-2021 when the Nevada Incorporated junior miner completed a two-step repatriation transaction that brought its legal home back to British Columbia. Through a plan of continuance under Nevada law followed immediately by an amalgamation under the BC Business Corporations Act, Contact Gold exchanged each share of its U.S. entity for one in the new Canadian parent, closing the move on June 4, 2021. By aligning its Canadian exploration projects, regulatory filings, and investor base under a single Canadian umbrella, the company not only streamlined compliance but also unlocked access to flow-through financing and local mineral incentives, essential to funding its multi-project drill programs. Beyond mining, a growing cadre of small-cap energy services and tech firms have quietly taken up the same playbook. One such example is Voltage Energy Services, a Texas-based electrical infrastructure contractor, which in late 2022 executed a redomiciliation under Canada's federal CBCA. Although its operations and crews remained in the American South, the new Canadian parent permitted Voltage to tap TSX-listed debt and benefit from more favorable capital cost allowances on grid modernization contracts north of the border, showcasing how even highly specialized U.S. businesses can leverage Canada's corporate regime without dismantling their U.S. footprints. Canada's appeal as a corporate haven has never been clearer than in the diverse array of 13 American firms that have shifted their legal centers northward. From giants like Restaurant Brands International, home to Burger King and Tim Hortons, and Waste Connections in waste management, to the storied coffee chain Tim Hortons itself, these moves have been driven by more than just headline tax savings. Even Shopify flirted with a New York address to balance U.S. prestige against Canadian benefits, while a broader tech exodus leveraged visa-friendly immigration pathways to staff Toronto and Vancouver hubs. Meanwhile, mid-cap players such as Civio Corporation and Coinbase have shown that redomiciling or establishing dedicated Canadian subsidiaries can unlock local capital market access and regulatory clarity without disturbing their U.S. operations. Junior miner and resource explorers have also embraced the shift. Next Source Materials, Sunshine Biopharma, Trillion Energy, Athena Gold, and Contact Gold all reincorporated under Canadian corporate statutes to take advantage of flow-through share financing, streamlined environmental permitting, and proximity to investors attuned to critical minerals development. Even niche service providers like Voltage Energy Services have executed seamless redomiciliations under Canada's Business Corporations Act, preserving American field operations while tapping TSX-listed debt and favorable capital allowances. Together, these 13 companies illustrate a strategic choreography. Paper headquarters might cross the border, but operational agility, market reach, and investor confidence remain firmly binational. As Canada continues to refine incentives and regulatory frameworks, the trend suggests a lasting realignment in North American corporate geography. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on why these companies are leaving the US now? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.